One of the fun things about Hamilton is knowing that every single lyric, every single bar, and every single song points to or references a significant moment in history. A perfect example of this is in Schuyler Defeated. Buried deep in the lyrics, actually in the original version and not the version that most people listen to, Burr actually calls Hamilton an asshole for many different reasons, but primarily because of his taxation on alcohol, which ultimately led to the Whiskey Rebellion of 1794. So after the Revolutionary War, the United States was drowning in debt. And as Treasury Secretary, Hamilton proposed America's first domestic tax on alcohol, which eventually was passed by Congress in 1791. But what he didn't account for was how farmers, especially small farmers, depended on whiskey to survive. So for 3 years, the taxation on alcohol began to stir up resistance amongst the farmers. And those tax collectors didn't have a chance. When they came looking for their money, they started to get tarred, feathered, threatened, or their house was burnt down. The people wasn't playing, not about their whiskey. And in July of 1794 in Pittsburgh, 500 armed men stormed the home of General John Neville and burned it down because he was the federal tax collector. So it was safe to say that the new American government had a full upscale rising on their hands. And in retaliation, Washington assembled 13,000 militiamen and personally led them towards Pennsylvania. And Hamilton rode with his army to enforce the very tax that he created. But by the time they arrived, the rebellion had already collapsed and most of the leaders fled. And only 2 men were convicted of treason, but they were both pardoned by Washington. That feels a little too familiar. In the end, I think this tax on alcohol was considered a bad one. It remained impossible to collect for nearly 8 years until Jefferson repealed it in 1802. So hopefully this little tidbit adds a little bit more context to your Hamilton fandom. Cheers.